And welcome back to Mixed Media Live, and sorry for that little weird botched opening the first time around. We were experimenting with some new technology, and that new technology is pretty promising. It'll allow us to stream even when I'm not around, which is pretty good, so that the other awesome hosts here can carry on and not be so dependent on me. And a whole host of other stuff that's awesome, like setup times being much better, which is also why it took so long. It took so long to get us up and running, because it takes a minimum of 10-15 minutes just to put all the information in all the sites and swap keys all around and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we are up and running now. None of that is your concern, but I am happy to be live with you, at least on a Tuesday, if not at the right time. So, yes, welcome back to Mixed Media, your weekly podcast talking about all things art, especially videos, filmmaking, music, and gaming. And without further ado, I'll let my co-hosts introduce themselves. I'll start, but my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania. Oh no, I have you muted. My bad. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer.
And my name is Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
And Sup Kai in the chat, thank you for joining us. He says third. More like third time's a charm for our stream. So welcome to Kai, but also thank you to Kai, and thank you to our other locals subscribers, namely 99 Crime, Post, and Alex Egbert, who all support us at mixedmedia.locals.com. We are contemplating some changes with the podcast, so things might be in flux. I know that this time, I haven't talked to my co-hosts about this actually yet, but this time has become in conflict with some things, or I don't know. We'll have to figure out something, but I'm hoping that we can kind of have a revival of some of the things that this show is hopefully best at, right? Which is being extremely eclectic, definitely. And us having very different backgrounds, but also all sort of connected to some sort of aesthetic space. And maybe we can sort of figure out a way that we can I don't know, sort of breathe new life into the show. Not that it necessarily needs new life, but just that it's good to just sort of do a change up once in a while, and it's more fun for us, I suspect, as well, to sort of change things up once in a while. So yeah, that's in the works, and it's only in the works because of our awesome subscribers at mixedmedia.locals.com. And if you need any link at all for anything that we have, you can go to mixedmediapodcast.com for all that information. But I will get the show going because we are a lot later right now than usual. So how are you guys this weeks?
That's fine.
We were here like 3 days ago.
Yeah, see, not much has really transpired of note since the last show, so...
Right,
yes. Right. Yeah, for me, I am on time crunch for the property. I mentioned this 3 days ago, for the brief time I was on the show. But my deadline for negotiations are on the 10th. For final negotiations are on the 10th. So if y'all could say a prayer for me in this property, because the old owner is a little surly, very unyielding when it comes to I don't know, just trying to help the deal go along. So if you could just send us a prayer our way for our house buying process at this household, I would super appreciate it, because it's a little stressful. But yeah, that's pretty much all that's happened since 3 days ago. So how about news?
This is not new as in happened in the last 3 days, but I think I posted on the Discord about it in the last 3 days, and it's a video of a game called I think it's called Body Cam, and it's realistic looking video game. And the graphics are really good. And it reminds me of a game we talked about a while ago called Unrecord, which is a similar style thing. And I remember we talked about it a little bit on the podcast, I think, or maybe it was in Discord. But I remember that I think Irving said that it must have something to do with the lighting or something like that. And something that it just completely I missed somehow is that it probably looks more realistic because it's supposed to be body cam footage as well, and so it can intentionally be a lot more janky, and it's easier to cover up any flaws and whatever when half your video is overexposed. That's interesting. I only noticed that when I was watching footage of the body of a body cam. I was like, oh, it's supposed to be a body cam, which is interesting. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of probably why it looks so good in part, So yeah, and I think something interesting too is that this was a real gameplay we saw with Unrecord. There's no one's actually played the game other than the devs, presumably. So we don't really know much about that game, but at least with Bodycam, it seems to use a similar way of looking around and aiming, which is not conventional, where rather than just moving your mouse to change where your player looks in the center of the screen is where your crosshair is aimed at, rather your weapon moves with your mouse, and once it reaches this invisible boundary to the left or right or bottom or top, I suppose, then your view moves. So your head, I guess, your virtual head moves. So it seems like something that would definitely take a lot of getting used to, but it's interesting and probably helps in that realistic looking feel, because a real body cam footage, it's not like their weapon is
glued to the center of their screen.
Yeah, glued at a specific angle all the time. So yeah,
that actually reminds me. I saw actually footage from that same game recently. I think the YouTube algo has figured out that it's an interesting visual thing, and so it's oh, you must be interested in this. But yeah, I saw some stuff from it, and it's definitely the lighting effects, but I think the thing that kind of gives it away is anytime physics is applied to something, and it's dang, that looks exactly like a video game.
Well, later we're talking about some cool physics, so we'll see how to do physics, I guess, correctly.
Exactly. But more interestingly, Squad, I think, changed its fighting system. I don't remember when. I don't play Squad. I happen to know this for completely other reasons, because Squad is kind of a very niche esport, and I've been tracking it for esports purposes. But anyway, with Squad, they changed their combat system so that your non-aim down sights kind of work that way. So it's not hip fire anymore. I think they call it like point fire or something. I don't know, where you're kind of gesturing in the direction, and things aren't really in sync, if you get what I mean, with your mouse necessarily. And actually leads to a completely different sort of skill set. It looks better. It looks a lot more natural because the sort of kinetics of your motion are now all accounted for, if that makes sense. Moving while shooting is not really that possible anymore. Moving aggressively, because all the sort of kinematics are kind of proper. So it's very bizarre, but I guess I'm seeing even another realistic shooter come out, so I guess this is the age of hyper realistic shooters. I don't know.
I think it's maybe that we've we had reached a point of a lot of stagnation in terms of technology, and now it's time to go crazy. I guess. So lots of cool stuff coming out.
Yeah, I see Ben has posted some things. What is that, Ben?
Yeah, I shared a track that was released today that I'm featured on, playing flute. Yeah.
Sweet.
So you can check that out if you're interested.
Is it part of an album, or?
No, it's just something that this composer recorded. I guess for sort of his own purposes. So a lot of nice flute in it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, you all should flood that video and smash the like button on it. I already did that, so there's no excuse. Click the link, hit the like button. It costs you nothing.
Yeah.
And definitely check it out later.
Yeah, he's definitely a very talented young composer, so
Cool.
keep that name in mind. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, you should have him on the show, maybe.
We'll see if I can arrange that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Any music news though, or?
Well, I guess this past weekend was the Grammys. I don't really pay much attention to them because they're just in too many, possibly many categories, and most of them I'm not really terribly interested in. I did note that or film score, I guess what they have the award is Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media. The nominees were Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, John Williams, The Fabelmans, John Williams, the Barbie score by Mark Ronson and Andrew Wyatt, and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Göransson, and the winner, also by Göransson, Oppenheimer.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that's probably somewhat of a preview, I would guess, of how the Oscars are going to go too. John Williams will be is up there as a nominee, but will not win. Probably something like Oppenheimer will win. Is my prediction. Not that I know everything that has come out, but yeah, it seems to be kind of it's a big film, probably a decent score. I don't know. So, maybe my guess is how the Oscars are going to go based on how the Grammys went.
Right.
I didn't know that that Oppenheimer had an acclaimed score.
I don't think it does, but
Acclaimed. I mean, I'm not sure anything that came out last year. I'm not really aware of anything that's truly acclaimed.
right.
I kind of want to watch Migration just to hear John Powell's score. I'm not sure the film itself is worth watching, but that's not the kind. I don't think it was in the time frame to win anyway. It was released in late December, so probably doesn't qualify. But nobody's going to vote for like a animated children's film about a family of ducks that are afraid to migrate. Even if it does have a great score. So, you know how these things go. So,
Right. Yeah, in the audience, I'd like you, whoever's listening right now, or if you're listening post, you could drop a comment or say something on the Discord. But every year we've punished ourselves with consuming Oscar-nominated content that is not necessarily fun to consume, depending on the particular piece. And it's fun to it's fun. It's potentially titillating to the viewer, at least, to sort of get our impressions on these films and see what we think about the scores and sort of the filmmaking side. Unfortunately, Nathan sort of gets cut out of this process, or maybe not. Unfortunately,
I can't even do it for video games because it would just take way too long once the nominees came out to even try to play them all.
Exactly. But if you would find value or be entertained in us doing that again this year, please let us know. Or if you're like, my goodness, why are we still why are we still doing this and punishing ourselves and being sad? Tell me if I can be relieved of my duties, and I will. I will continue to watch the films that I feel like watching instead of forcing 4 or 5 films into my rotation, of which usually 3 of them are really bad, and only one of them feels Oscar worthy. So let us know what you think about that.
Actually, I'm curious, Irving. What did you think of this score for Barbie?
I don't remember it.
Okay.
I remember, obviously the Barbie theme song obviously is in there.
And yeah, they had some other. I think that one of the songs won some big title award. I don't know.
There's
I don't
only
pay
one
enough
other
attention.
song besides the theme song that I can remember. Is it like the Ryan Gosling one thing where he's singing?
I thought that
I
maybe that's what
honestly
it
don't.
is. Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't it the Ken song? I don't know what the song is. I just feel like I've heard it.
Oh gosh,
heard
I'm
about
just
it.
remembering it now, and I just want to die. Oh gosh.
Let's see. Let's see. I don't. So I haven't seen the film, so honestly, I don't know. I paid no attention to it. But let's see. One of the like larger awards that it won. So I don't know what record of the year is versus there's record of the year, album of the year, and song of the year. So I did give it like a
What's the
like,
difference?
what's the difference between a record and a song, or a
Can
record and album?
Can a record be an EP and an
don't-
album cannot?
I don't know I don't know because all the record of the year, all the nominees: John Baptiste Worship, Not Strong Enough by Boy Genius, Miley Cyrus is
You say
Flowers.
John
on it.
Baptiste Worship? Oh my gosh.
John
Sorry.
I love John Baptiste. We talked about
Am I-
him last week.
Am I
Or
thinking of the
last
same
show.
song? Maybe I'm not thinking of the right song.
Oh, I don't know. This is his new album.
Okay.
I haven't heard it.
Never
I
mind.
mentioned him a couple weeks, or I mentioned him last time when I was talking about Taylor Swift and album prices.
Mm.
So Miley Cyrus's Flowers won for record of the year. Also nominated was "What Was I Made For" by Billie Eilish from Barbie. On
Billie
My
Eilish
Mom.
is
that
in
one,
Barbie?
right? Looks
No,
like
that
one.
did not win. That did not win record of the year.
Oh, it won
My-
best song written for visual media.
So it won. It also won Song of the Year, but it didn't win.
There are so many categories. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
It's both in record of the year and song of the year. And it didn't win record of the year, but it won song of the year. What was
Honestly,
I?
it couldn't have been that bad because I don't remember it. So it couldn't have been terribly like interesting either because I don't remember it, or maybe I repressed it. I don't know. Kai says, "If I ever love a woman as much as Irving hates that film, I think I have to marry her." Listen, as long as she doesn't say, "Hey, can we watch Barbie tonight?" I think you're fine. You're fine. If she says that, run away. But yeah, no, I really don't like that film. But yeah, no, I don't remember any of the music, to be honest. I only remember the Ken song thing because it was so. Oh, it was just how bad it was. It was the reason I remember it.
Well, I'm just wondering because the score itself was not the underscore, not the songs. The score was
I
nominated.
didn't even
for
remember there
best
being
score,
an underscore, to be honest.
But that's how a lot of films like that go. You're not even really supposed to notice that there's music. So
Right. Yeah, it
I'm
doesn't
sure-
feel like that kind of movie anyway. That's why I'm like there's a lot of like there's still controversy over the Barbie stuff, and people are saying all these ridiculous things, and it's just like this is just not that kind of film. Like it never was. Like it would have never like it doesn't matter what era you put this film in, it would never have gotten like the amount of Oscar attention it's getting now. You know, it's getting it's maximizing its Oscar presence, in my opinion, because it's just not that kind of. It's not even like. This is the thing. Like, I think it was pitched as that kind of film, because that's why I wanted to see it so bad, right? Like, but I feel like it ended up being like kind of cheap and cheesy, and just kind of in the blockbuster format, except I guess about a topic people were excited to hear about. There's like literally nothing interesting about the film, even if you take apart how bad it is from like a storytelling perspective, which is to say it's completely incoherent. But you know, and it feels like I'm like literally just hallucinating the entire time. But if you remove even that aspect, it's like what in there is like that special? Like what would count in what in here is like so interesting or special that it would ever have gotten the Oscar love that people seem to expect it to get? I don't get it. I don't understand. You know, like this is the equivalent of like Jurassic World. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's like the equivalent of Jurassic World getting, like, a ton of Oscars. It's like, dang, Jurassic World, like, really just outperformed itself, just by its category, not even by its, like, contents, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't know. Mini rant over, but not a fan. Any other music news, or?
That's all I've noticed in the past 2-3 days, whatever.
Sweet. Yeah, the only thing that I've noticed, I literally read this headline like right before I got in the car to come home. And I just opened up the most random articles, so I have no idea if the contents of this article are accurate or not. Especially because it's a legal thing, and I love to read legal things anyway. So I just go to the primary sources, the complaint in this case. But basically, Gina Carano sues Disney for her firing of The Mandalorian, which sounds like I feel like that was a billion years ago, but I just don't remember.
It was back in 2020 where she was being very anti-vaccine and saying that she's using the term Nazis pretty liberally about people who disagreed with her, and so Disney kind of quietly got rid of her.
Yes, I remember the reason for the controversy. It's more like I was like, when did this happen? But yeah, I feel like I remember her suing Disney way back then as well. So I just don't remember any of the effects of any of this stuff because I didn't really actually follow it. So that's an interesting piece of news. I think really I think this controversy has more to do with double standards than anything. It's like, I mean, that's going to be the sort of cultural back and forth is like, what sort of like actual behavioral standards are there and are they equitably applied, right? Is sort of the thing. People call people Nazis all the time on Twitter if you spend any time on Twitter. No matter what side of the argument of anything you're on, someone else is a Nazi. So, yeah. That's that. But that's all I noticed. It's 3 days, so I haven't noticed anything else. So with that, I suppose we should go to our first segment.
All right.
Which will be Nathan on what again?
The finals. Reviewing the finals.
All right. So here we go.
Mixed Media Gaming.
Hello and welcome to Mixed Media Gaming, the segment of the Mixed Media Podcast where I talk about something in video games. Today I'll be doing a review of the new-ish game called The Finals. The Finals has received a lot of attention for it being innovative in a few ways and also having its origins in Battlefield in some sense, which is interesting. Yeah, let's get into it. Before we do that, let's reintroduce ourselves. So my name is Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
And my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer.
Cool. All right. So, I've been playing The Finals quite a bit, actually. I have 64 hours on it, I think, currently, something like that. So, I only started playing a couple weeks ago. I mean, it only came out a few weeks ago. So, yeah. So, what is The Finals? To put it very broadly, The Finals is a competitive multiplayer first-person shooter, which I know doesn't tell you much, but I'll get into the meat of it at some point later. So The Finals are created by a new studio called Embark Studios. This is their first game. And maybe saying, if you're looking at any footage, and I forgot to post footage to show, but Irving, if you could pull up some gameplay. Yeah. If you see any footage, you might be like, how is their first game or whatever? It's because they were, I said its roots are in Battlefield, and sort of because it's the team was created by former EA and DICE employees. I'm not sure actually like where those people were, like what part of the pipeline they were a part of, whether they were like mostly it's the artists, mostly the programmers, or maybe the executives. I don't really know, right? Because I feel like you can definitely get very different vibes if it's the programmers versus the game designers versus like the executives, right? But some people came to create Embark Studios, and we know, as I've discussed before, not in a segment dedicated to it at all, but just in passing a few times. Irving shares the same sentiment that Battlefield has kind of gone downhill in terms of its destruction. That's no secret, and they need to bring it back. That's potentially the hot take. Ever since Battlefield Bad Company 2, we've not seen destruction as we've seen before, but the finals takes it up a notch. So what do I mean by destruction for those who haven't played Battlefield or don't play video games very often? In some video games, namely some first-person shooters, there are, or not necessarily first-person, but in some shooters, they have the ability to destroy the environment around you. What I mean by that are things like grenades being able to blow holes in walls, or rocket launchers and other explosives, or being able to drive a tank through fences and all that good stuff, right? Now, some of that stuff is pretty standard, like a tank driving through a fence is pretty normal and pretty simple, but things get a lot more complicated when you want to dynamically blow holes in walls, because, well, how do you get the geometry of the 3D model that is the wall to dynamically like make a hole in it? it's a I don't know. It's a hard problem. In case that wasn't obvious, I don't know how evident that would be, but no, yeah, it's not like you can like write some code very simply to do it. You can write code to do it. The issue is more the performance of it, and tessellating that much geometry and doing that on the fly can be a big deal. And so a lot of games compromise, and what they do is they have sort of pre-baked in destruction. And what I mean by that is, I'll say you have a wall, there will be sort of segments of that wall where it says, okay, if a rocket launcher or some explosive hits this section of the wall, this section of the wall will blow up in this predetermined way, essentially. And you can bake that in before how do I explain this? you bake it in so it doesn't occur real time. It does not calculate in real time, right? And so when it's baked in, there's no calculations that need to be done on the fly, and so there's no efficiency loss or anything like that. The issue is that you only bake in so many different spots for explosions before you start to get like very, very large bake maps of things and stuff like that, and that's not good. So instead, everything is done dynamically. So that is what this game is doing, and it manages to do it without receiving much of a performance hit from these things. It's very rare. Well, my FPS will drop because of destruction. It's happened before, but it's very, very rare, surprisingly.
Well, in Bad Company 2, though, there was no... I mean, it's a very performant game if you go back and play it,
Right.
Destruction, I don't remember... I mean, it's been a billion years since I picked it up, but, I don't remember Destruction costing much, either, for Bad Company 2.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of secret sauce they had going on, but they did something, and it was well. Although I don't think the destruction of Battlefield Bad Company 2 was as I don't know what's the term for it, as permissive as destruction in the finals, where basically like almost anything that's not integral to like the game can be destroyed in the finals. Everything save the floor, the literal floor beneath you. Unless you're in a multi-story building, in which case the floor can be destroyed. But, the ground, the earth, it cannot be destroyed. Right. But every building, every part of it can be destroyed, and things that are core to the objectives cannot be destroyed. So, it's pretty crazy. So, that is sort of the hook of the finals. So, here's an overview. That's the word of it for it. The overview of the gameplay. So the sort of theme of the game is you're actually like competing in a virtual tournament or virtual game. So
it's a game within a game.
Yeah, it's a game within a game. That's what's going on. Not very evident by just looking at the video, but it's you really only get that from dialogue cues from the in-game commentators who are commentating on the game within the game. So they are one level in. So they're not aware of you. They're aware of the thing in the game that's playing the game, and then you're playing that. So yeah. But essentially, the idea is you're in this virtual world, and you're, so no one is really dying or anything like that, right? It's all part of the game within this game, and it's a competition where there is money at stake. It's just some sort of, I don't know, advanced esport. I don't know, esport of the future, right? And the game modes are all based on collecting a certain amount of cash to win the game. So there are currently 2 game modes with some variations. So the first one is called Quick Cash. Oh man, the names of these game modes are not descriptive. So Irving, remind me if I'm wrong here. Is Quick Cash the one with the box, or is it the one with the coins? There's Quick Cash and there's Bank It. I think Bank It's the one with the coins.
Yeah.
Okay,
Quick Cash.
so,
yeah, you're right.
Okay, so Quick Cash is what seems to be the standard game mode, I suppose, of the game, where the way it works is there are 3 teams, which is very interesting. They're not just 2 teams. There are 3 teams, and I'll discuss more about that later and all the interesting game design implications that has. But there are 3 teams who are fighting over this cube, essentially, that is called a vault. The vault, I think, is supposed to contain $10,000 in cash, or at least, well, depending on if you're playing tournament or not. Okay, I'll say it contains some amount of cash in it. And what you have to do is you have to bring, the 3 teams will fight to bring that box into a deposit box. And once you put it in the deposit box, a timer will start, in which case you have to defend that deposit box for a certain amount of time. Attackers will have to try to steal that deposit box by like holding E on the box for like a certain amount of time without dying. And if it's captured, it becomes theirs, and the timer continues going. And when the timer runs out, whatever money is in the vaults is awarded to the team. There's only one. Well, I'll get to that later. But yeah, in the normal quick cash game mode, the unranked version of it, or sorry, the non-tournament version of it, there you get $10,000 per vault every single time, and you need 20,000 to win. So you just need to do it twice, essentially. There's also a tournament style mode where it's what it sounds like. It's just like there are a bunch of teams, and then you're entered into a bracket of quick cash over and over and over again. There are some real differences. Irving can attest, it is confusing, and I don't completely understand it.
Definitely.
But it is mostly the same, except that instead of being 3 teams, there are now 4 teams. And instead of there being 1 vault and 1 deposit box, there are actually 2 at a time. So you can choose which deposit to go to, and you can actually put 2 vaults in 1 deposit box, which increases the amount you'll get from claiming that deposit box in the end. So yeah, and then it's the top 2 teams stay, and the bottom 2 teams get eliminated. So rather than being you need 20,000 to win, there's like a timer. I don't know how the timer works. It's very strange. It's not simple. It's not like it just goes down. But there's a timer, and once the timer ends, it's the bottom 2 teams get knocked out, and then the bracket continues over and over again. So you get to the finals, and in the finals, that's where it becomes a 1v1 rather than a 1v1v1v1, and which changes things up again a little bit. So yeah, there are also limited respawns in. I'm not sure if there are limited respawns in all tournaments or just ranked tournaments specifically, because you can play those ranked and unranked. But there are at least limited respawns in ranked. So yeah, that's how that works. The other game mode is called Bank It. It works differently. There are still deposit boxes, but there are no vaults. The way it works is that there are vaults. But rather than physically grabbing the vault and bringing it to the deposit box, the vault, once opened, will drop all these coins. So when you can pick up these coins, and then as the game progresses, more and more vaults will spawn with higher and higher cash value amounts, and so essentially increasing the stakes as you go on. You can then what is going on in this video? Sorry, this is extreme parkour. But anyways,
I didn't know this. You can latch on to the thing you throw with the.
Oh, that's what happened. Wow. That's crazy tech. Okay, this guy is flying.
Yeah, this guy can traverse the map in 2 seconds, apparently. How's he doing?
What the heck? We got elimination.
Oh my gosh, it's always the people who have all the time in the world to figure out the game.
I actually did spend time in practice. Okay, I was trying something different. I was like, I wonder if you can throw an object mid-air. So there are jump pads in the game, right? I'm wondering if you could walk on the jump pad with an item, or you throw what was it? You jump on the jump pad, you throw the item beneath you, and I was wondering if you could jump off the item in midair. And the answer is no, you cannot. You cannot do that. But this guy figured out something way better. So
seriously.
Is he holding a turret?
Yes, he's holding the turret. There's so many things in here that I had no idea were possible. What is happening?
Wow. Okay. It's weird because they have to code that. Interesting. Wow. Or it was like accidental emergent behavior from existing code. I don't know. Maybe they saw that like, oh, we'll keep it in. But anyways,
this is a month ago, so maybe it was all patched.
Oh, maybe. I have no idea. This is crazy. But wow. I'm just bewildered. 64 hours, and I had never seen anything like I'm seeing in this video. But, anyways, what was I saying? Oh my gosh. The banking game mode. Yeah, you get coins in these vaults. You deposit them at the deposit boxes rather than having to capture them. All you have to do is hold E on it for a certain amount of time, and it immediately captures it. There's no timer. The game progresses. You get to get a certain amount of cash. I forget how much it is when time ends. When you kill an enemy player, they drop $1,000 plus any cash they were holding in their inventory as well. So yeah, that's how that works. It's also this limited time event where it's essentially Bankit, except rather than being I should say Bankit is 4 teams against each other, but there's a limited time event where rather than being 4 teams, it's every man for himself. So it's free for all essentially. And I also said that teams are 3 players each, no matter the game mode. So yeah, that is how that works. Okay, so that's all the game mode stuff dealt with. I guess I'll pause here and ask everyone, what do you think about the game? What do you think about the game mode and I guess what we're seeing for the first time on screen?
This video is so distracting. Like, I'm just looking at the most insane things happen. I'm like, what on earth? Yeah, so, wow, okay. Anyway.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I think this is an awesome game. I think the first thing that it does really well is it's super vibey. Like, look at the aesthetic. Like, it's so coherent and like, I don't know, different. Like, what would you even compare this to? Probably Mirror's Edge, but Nathan told me already that it's already, the aesthetic is inspired by Mirror's Edge. So that makes sense.
They said that, yeah.
But
I don't know what about it. It's kind of like it's like some weird mix between cartoony and not at all. You know what I'm saying? I don't really know how to explain it. It's just stylized, I guess, is what you call it, right? It's
a very particular. It's like very matte, very like.
It's very clean, kind of, but not clean at the same time. Mirror's Edge is definitely more clean. Like Mirror's Edge is just clean entirely.
Ultra clean, yeah. I don't even know how to begin to describe this. The art department just went crazy. Like they, they clearly had a awesome art department that just, I don't know, they just went nuts.
Right.
So that's the first thing, and that actually, honestly, more than anything else, that kind of sucked me in because it's the graphical fidelity feels like I'm playing a game from that belongs in this era, where most games that come out these days, graphics aren't everything, but when things are visually pleasing, they're visually pleasing. So most games these days, I feel like it's just oddly not performant, or oddly look horrible, and you're like, why? I feel like in 2024, solutions for these problems should be kind of plug and play. I would think.
This game does use Unreal Engine, actually.
Yeah, so that might be a contributing factor. I wouldn't know the particulars, but I think of any other area of technology, particularly in programming, right? It's most things where people have been trying to solve the problem for 15 years. There's you probably don't have to redevelop stuff, if you get what I mean. But I feel in the gaming world, I don't know. Anyway, that's a sidetracking thing. I feel most things should probably look not maybe this good, but like something in this ballpark, is kind of what I expect most things to look like, because games have been looking like this for a long time. So it's like it's just refreshing. But two, the gameplay is like pretty darn epic, and I think that it like revives a kind of epic moments, kind of like Battlefield-esque like way of thinking about playing the game, because the amount of situations that are possible with the tools that are given, the way balancing is worked out, destruction, map design, everything. The rule set is super simple. It stays simple
Until you play ranked, but yeah.
Until you play ranked, and then it gets weird. But generally, it's a simple game. It's very easy to understand, and how you sort of develop your own meta is very easy to understand. It's not that dissimilar from every other game, and yet the amount of situations that you'll like run into that you've like never seen before, or like or just like feel like unique circumstances is pretty high, and that's after also playing many hours, not 60, whatever, but I've played many hours as well. So yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah. I'm just gonna write some stuff down that you said so I can touch on it later because I don't forget. Yeah, I definitely be talking about maps and the fact that you get into these new scenarios all the time. And there's one other thing I was going to say. Oh yeah, the performance as well. And I guess I'll talk about that now. The performance is actually really good. It's very surprisingly that it runs very well. And even on those settings, the game looks really good. Now, what's interesting is it's the first game I've ever seen that forces you to use a super sampling technology. So that would be DLSS or FSR, or there's another option. I don't know what it is. I never looked it up, so I never heard of it before. I don't know what it is, but I think there's also an Intel option too. I think there's actually 4 options. So
I have I have a little bit of a rant here.
Okay.
So City Skylines 2, which by the way is like dying. Like it's the big content creators, like 500k subs content creators. These content creators are like literally making video essays about how bad the game is at this point. So watching it crash and burn has turned from like frustration to like, okay, at least like people understand. At least I'm not going crazy. Like this is just a horrible game. But City Skylines 2 looks bad. It just, in my opinion, it looks horrible. And it's unperformant. On my PC, I had a different CPU at the time, but I have a 3080. I think I was getting like the city didn't grow that much. I was hitting like 40, 30 FPS. It's like, dang, the city gets like any tiny bit larger, I might be hitting 20, 10 FPS. And that's just like, there's just no excuse for that for a game that looks like it could have come out graphically 10 years ago, literally. It's like, what is that, And again, I don't know what it is, literally. But, like, from my engineering brain, it, like, doesn't, like, I can't understand it. I can't understand why it's like that. So, for this game to look so much better, and now I have a new CPU, so... well, actually, before I got the new CPU, I was getting about 70 FPS on this game. Max settings. Changed my CPU, now I get 140 FPS. So, it's like...
Wait, that's something crazy. I just wanted to see what engine it was made with, and it's made with Unity, but that's besides the point, because when I found it on the Wikipedia page, and then on the Wikipedia page on like the little section on the left side or whatever, there's a category that says reception. Under that, there's teeth rendering controversy. I'm like, what is that?
What is that?
Rendering, that sounds interesting. And it says, quote, each simulated citizen has their teeth rendered in full detail, even though characters never open their mouths, hence those teeth are never visible. Developers confirm this fact and say that this does not contribute to the performance in any significant way. Interesting. I mean, theoretically, it actually shouldn't because of culling, which essentially just prevents the rendering of things that cannot be seen. But like, it's also one of those things where like, presumably the culling itself will take some amount of processing power. I think I don't know how culling actually works or whatever. But I know how to make a very, very bare bones, like super simple, like 3D renderer because they're very complicated. It's like just the very simplest, basic, like ugly looking thing ever, right? And from what I understand, more geometry literally would make it worse. Like, but I don't know if they just use some fancy techniques that I guess they say quote in any significant way, so maybe it does change things, but just not significantly. I don't know, but maybe that's kind of a bad omen for the remainder of the game. But yeah,
I've technically made a 3D engine before in college. Technically, although it was a horrible experience, would not recommend. I've made a 3D engine technically. And it was very unperformant. You couldn't run real time. You couldn't render a sphere real time. But from what I remember, things like culling are actually pretty rudimentary. You can do it pretty efficiently. So
okay, well, okay. I suppose it's not really a big issue. By the way, this game was
some
nominated
math
for
and projection and stuff like this. It's a simple math sort of problem.
Right? Is it? I think. Is this we use a Z buffer for, right, or something like that? You know what that is?
Dude, I don't remember. That word sounds so familiar, but I don't remember what it is.
Okay, yeah, that's the furthest extent I would know of anything about this thing, anyway. So, yeah,
we got some chats, by the way, if you want to read them.
Let's see. Where Kakaro says the game does look pretty nifty. Presumably not talking about City Skylines, but about the finals. It says, okay, so they're going for Dwarf Fortress levels of simulation, but more than ASCII graphics. Yeah, it's possible they're also simulating that and other things that won't be seen. Are we talking about teeth now, or what are we talking about?
Sim level AI stuff.
AI, huh?
Like pathfinding. Stuff like this.
Okay, I see. Okay, right. And you made a 3D engine so cool, and Crime says.
It was not fun. Would not recommend. I did it for an assignment only. It was one of the worst assignments of mine. Literally, top 5 to 10 worst assignments I've ever gotten. Would not recommend. But I started from the triangle level. Yeah,
right.
I don't even remember.
Tangent for sure. But it's just interesting to me that our rendering pipelines could have ended up so differently, because the way things currently work, right, is essentially 3D models are split up into triangles, and triangles are rendered, and it's nice because if everything's made out of triangles, you only need one. There's only one thing. You only need to know how to render triangles, right? And then you can make anything from there. So your hardware can specialize in just rendering triangles. Obviously, nowadays, it's a little bit more complicated than just rendering triangles, but at the core of it is just rendering triangles, right? And applying a shader to it and all that good stuff, right? And so, you don't think about, what is this polygon or this polygon? It's there's one generic way to do everything. That's cool, and that seems to work. And triangle is the most simple shape, so you can make all the shapes from it, 2D or 3D. But the interesting thing is that we almost got into, maybe none of Crime knows about this because he knows more about retro gaming systems, but I believe this is this is not quite this is post retro consoles, or I guess what I would consider retro consoles, but this is more PC PC enthusiast gaming was starting to become a real thing, I think, and people building their own computers and that type of enthusiast stuff. And I think there are graphics cards back in the day that didn't do triangle rasterization, which is the technique where you are making things out of triangles, but instead were voxel based only. So they would make things out of cubes or something like that. So actually, we use the term voxel, a voxel game, when referring to things like Minecraft or a Cube World.
Yeah,
or
voxel is supposed to be a pixel level type unit, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So a voxel is not literally there's cubes somewhere. It's there are cubes, but that's not what it means. Literally, Minecraft is rendered using triangle rasterization. But if it was rendered using voxels, it would probably be really efficient because it's mostly just voxels. Actually, if we had the hardware to actually support it. But the issue is that all our graphics cards nowadays do not do that. They only do triangles. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't. It was interesting to me that I wonder, is it this really the most efficient like way to render things? Is there not like a better way that we must have figured it out at some point? But it's just that like we're too deep in. We just can't change all this
My
hardware.
professor for that computer graphics class, I think he claims to have made the first voxel engine. That's the literal only reason why I know the technical definition of what a voxel is. I think he said he made the first voxel engine in some team, and he was super proud of it. I don't know if it's more efficient or not, but yeah.
I don't know either if voxels are more efficient, but I do know that we just don't know about other render techniques. It seems because I haven't been tried out on a large scale, and the game Teardown looks great and it's ray traced, and you can run that like on some like I think you can run that on integrated graphics by it being ray traced because it actually uses voxel rendering. I'm pretty sure. And apparently something about like ray tracing and its efficiency when it's uses voxels rather than triangular rasterization or something like that. I don't know the technical details, but yeah. 99 Crime says the Sega Saturn uses quads and triangles. Interesting. I suppose that sounds complicated for something like a sphere, for example, because it's not going to like. How do you do that? I guess it would just be a very like if you have a low polygon enough system, like if you're not going for a smooth sphere, which I suppose in Sega and Saturn days you may not be, then I guess it's not really a big deal. You could probably make it out of quads decently. Kakaro says, imagine all the Minecraft blocks being 16 by 16 by 16 voxels instead of texture blocks. Somewhere a computer scientist is crying. Right. All right, but anyways, that was a decent tangent. Karo says, I guess that might be worse if you actually simulate the pixels separately, though. Oh, wait. I think two messages appeared at once. 99 Crime said, Sega partnered with NVIDIA to make a PC card that also used quads based on Saturn's tech, but was banned because the tech is so weird. Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Alternate possible history of video games. But back to the topic at hand. So, what was I talking about? Oh, performance. So yeah, that it runs really well. It forces you to use super sampling. So I was going to explain what super sampling is. Essentially, you render the game at a lower resolution. So say for me, I have a 1440p screen and I play the game at 1440p, but maybe I don't know what it actually renders it at. Let's say it renders it at 1080p or let's say 1080p, right? And what it does is it somehow upscales the image and doesn't just do like, the MS Paint stretch of image that, would just do nothing essentially. It somehow figures out like how to change the image to try to smartly upscale it to more accurately represent what it would be if you just rendered natively at 1440p. Now, there are different technologies and the way they do this is different. DLSS, which is NVIDIA's solution, uses AI, and what that means, I don't really know. Like, I don't know if they is a neural network that they trained on a bunch of images and stuff like that, and figured out like, okay, this is like the appropriate algorithm essentially to upscale things. And then AMD's is called FSR, although created by AMD is able to be used on, I don't know if it's all graphics cards, but at least most modern ones, at least. That does not use AI. They don't claim for it to use AI. I don't know how that works either. And then there's Intel's, and then there's whatever the other fourth option is. I don't know. So yeah, that's interesting. It forces you to use one. You cannot disable it. I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay. Other than performance, we talked about a little bit about maps. There are a few maps in the game. I will say at 64 hours, the thematic nature of it does kind of get boring, I feel like, because there are a lot of houses that look exactly the same. There are in these maps. What do you say?
I agree with that.
Okay, yeah.
Houses with the same exact layout, too.
Oh, yeah. Now, there's pros and cons to this, and I think, I'll get to that, but let me write that down. Same layout. Okay, so, yeah, there are pros and cons to that, but aside from that, the maps are pretty large for a 12 or 9 player game, depending on what mode. And the way they're structured is typically there is a lot of like, I don't know what you call it, a lot of like, it's like the grass in Pokemon. It's very like whatever, it's like very like normal stuff. And then you have your like very like your how's the name for these things? There's a name for these things in specifically like game development. But they're like these like key points that are like just different. They stand out in some sense. So like maybe a skyscraper or something like that. It's just different, or a construction site. You have like your houses for your endless houses in this like urban setting, and then you'll have these like really tall skyscrapers surrounding it, right? So sort of like I don't know, just points of interest, I suppose, in the game. There's a crane, for example, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's mostly very samey in many parts of the game, although it looks very nice. But then there are like sort of certain key points and stuff like that are a little bit more interesting and yeah. So in terms of the pros and cons of having the same layout for a lot of these buildings, the con is that it looks very samey and that's kind of annoying. The pro is it's very easy to navigate buildings. So like the buildings are all laid out in pretty much the same way. They are all rectangles. I mean like 90% of them. 90% of them are rectangles. Also depends on the map too. Because for example, Las Vegas does not work like this at all. There are no buildings like this. But I think all the other maps, I want to say, work like this, where the buildings are all rectangles, and then on like if you imagine on the longer side of the rectangle, or sorry, the shorter sides will have the staircase. One of the sides. It just depends on the building, I guess, which side or whatever. But one of the shorter sides will have the staircase that'll go up and up and up, and that's essentially it. And then there'll be kind of empty rooms that include nothing in them, which is kind of strange, except in Las Vegas where everything is furnished for some reason. I don't know why it's different, but Las Vegas takes place essentially in like this like casino complex, and all that stuff is like actually like furnished. But you can probably see in this video probably that if you enter a building, there is no furniture, so it's just random structures and whatever in the rooms. So the fact that they're the same layout is really nice when it comes to just navigation because it's easy to figure out where to go. I played Warzone semi-recently, Warzone 2, and one of the things that was awful was like, man, I just can't find the stairs to this building. I don't know where to go. I'm just running around this building, and it's different every time. And it's more interesting because the buildings don't look the same. And also, interesting part about this game is you can enter literally every room, which I suppose makes a lot of sense given that you can destroy everything. So it'd be kind of weird if you destroy a wall. Sorry, that was an interesting part of the video. It would be interesting if you destroy a wall, but you couldn't enter the room. That would be kind of broken. So, whereas in Warzone, that's not an issue because you can't break everything, and so there are a lot of rooms that you just cannot access. But there's a lot more variety to the rooms in Warzone for sure. So, yeah, that's that with the layout and the pros and cons of that. I think it probably is actually better for it to be for the type of game it is, where it's relatively fast paced to be able to find the stairs quickly. So I think that was a decent trade off for this game. So yeah, everyone else talked a little bit about the fact that you seem to get thrown into these new scenarios over and over again, scenarios you haven't seen before, and that is true because of the dynamic nature of the game and the fact that the maps are relatively large. You'll find yourself in new buildings that have varying levels of destruction that change the way things work, and there are enough items and equipment that your opponents will be different pretty frequently, and your own loadout will be different pretty frequently. So the whole scenario can be changed, and the fact there's a third team in means that things can get even more dynamic with whether that third team is even present at the moment or not, or if they've all been eliminated. Right, things can change quite a bit. So. I think that this also kind of has pros and cons. On the surface, it sounds pretty cool. It's like, oh, who wouldn't want more variety, right? Less samey and stuff like that. Although there's not necessarily anything wrong with sameness, right? Consider something like Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike has a relatively finite set of maps, considering, if you play it a long time, they're not big enough for you to, you'll just learn them all. Every crevice you learn, it's a pretty finite set of maps and locations. And you're kind of doing pretty much the same thing every single time, more or less. Yes, scenarios change, but not typically. You're not gonna be like, man. Oh, sometimes you do go, man. I've never seen that happen before. But oftentimes, like, yeah, I mean, I peeked this corner, someone was there and they shot me. That has literally happened before, or vice versa, right? Someone peeked the corner, I shot the person, and yeah, I've done that before. There are only so many corners in this game, so. Now, there is a lot more variety when it comes to sort of the emerging pattern of people when it comes to the fact that CSGO is a 5-5 game and not everyone's going to be located in the same place, but there are still general sort of strategies and general sort of pushes that will cause things to be pretty similar over and over again. So, yeah. Not inherently bad, but in this game, there is a lot of variety, and that's cool to see. But here's the issue with that. In creating a lot of variety, like the method that they used to do that meant that there couldn't be a lot of focus on the balance of the map, essentially. So, for example, we experience things like really bad spawns. Sometimes the timers on the vaults or on the deposit boxes are up. They're long enough for the game, of course, but every second really does count. So you get that like spawn where you're like 200 meters away. It's like, what the heck, compared to someone being 50 meters away. It's like, it just seems random. It's like, why did that happen this time? That's not a this has never happened before moment that you'd want to see. That's just annoying. So there's that. Also, you can get third party pretty easily. So being third party in video games means in shooters, or I suppose in other games too, when you are in a 1v1 situation or you're in a clearly defined battle with two teams, and a third team just shows up and typically attacks one team and just ruins them. It kind of feels bad. The scale, the balance of the game has just changed quite a bit. And for no other reason than they happened to stumble upon you, essentially. It wasn't like something you did that was your fault. You just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the opponents were in a fine place, essentially. So that can happen quite a bit because the maps are so so open, I suppose, and the things that can happen are so open-ended. So that kind of stuff it's a hard problem. I don't really know how you fix that. Sorry, I'm mesmerized by this video still. That's one issue. I think there's a few chats. Did I read this art? I guess that might be worse if you actually simulate the pixels separately, though. Did I read that? I think I read that, right? I don't remember. And then Gamer says, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Gamer, for the okay.
Also, how did you get that username? What platform is he on?
He's on YouTube.
Oh, is there no
No, not for your display name, I don't think.
Yeah, because you can have like a channel name to anything, right? It doesn't have to be unique. So I suppose. Okay. Okay, Harris said I did. Okay, I was like, I thought so. I was like, I don't know if I'm really saying it or not, but yeah. Okay. So aside from maps, aside from interesting scenarios and whatnot, right, the actual destruction physics is really good, as you can see in the video. Now there are moments where it kind of fails a little bit. For example, there are some scenarios where you can kind of see almost as if it's like pre-baked destruction, where you can see like hard lines being drawn. I don't know if this is for efficiency reasons, where like kind of like I don't know if anyone's ever seen like the behind the scenes of how Noida was created, or like the sort of performance stuff they had to pull off there to get their game to not run on anyone's computer, where they simulate have essentially a rectangle of influence, I guess you can call it, where they only simulate things in the rectangle at once, where they break things up into rectangular chunks to simulate, and they can do that on different threads, which means that things in different rectangular chunks have an issue with interacting with each other, because multi-threading is very hard to get that stuff to happen where things will interact with each other. So I don't know if that's an issue with that, of like there was some weird like chunking going on, and then like it just cut a line in the middle of the building or something like that, and there's a hard line in the building randomly. I have no idea what causes that, but it does happen occasionally. So also, there is there's like some sense of like structural integrity, where buildings can collapse if you destroy enough of the bottom of them. It doesn't really seem to make very much sense, like in terms of like what exactly you're destroying to cause it to happen. It's like this feels like a pretty like vanity wall type thing, where like this doesn't really do anything with the structure, but I guess it could cause the building to collapse, sure. Yeah, the structural integrity though is also a hard problem that they seem to have somewhat figured out, which is pretty cool to see. So, yeah, moving on from sort of performance and or destruction and gameplay kind of stuff, the game is completely free and it takes on a live service model. You can only pay for cosmetics and a battle pass currently. The battle pass just gives you cosmetics essentially. So there's nothing like you can't really buy. I don't think you can even buy the currency you use to buy weapons and things like this. So yeah, there's surprisingly few content in the game for it being a live service game. I thought it'd be updated a lot more frequently. I know everyone told me this actually earlier, And yeah, I would expect a lot more content to be added to the game, but I'm not complaining. I don't. It still has a lot of content, and yeah, it's pretty good in that regard. Um,
Yeah,
so
not a complaint on my side either. It's just more of like a business model expectation thing, you know.
yeah, it's like, huh, interesting. Um, yeah, I'm curious to see how they're funded, right? Like, like how much
They
in
had to
debt
have
are they?
investors.
Yeah, I was thinking, how much in debt
They had
are
to.
they, if any, or is it like, yeah, maybe they have investors where, like, rather than it being like a loan, it's like they get a percentage of the company or something like that.
It's probably
I don't know.
both.
Yeah, because I don't think hard game to fund, for sure. If you look at the credits, there are a lot of credits. There are a lot of people, and not all of them came from EA and Dice, I'm sure. A lot of them were new hires, surely. So they couldn't just afford to just bootstrap it all in and just go off of savings. There's no way. So I'm curious to see if their plan is to just try to rake people in at the beginning, and then they start being more aggressive on the live servicey stuff, or what. I don't really know, but I guess we'll see. Time will tell. I forgot to say in terms of gameplay, the classes and equipment and stuff like that. So there are 3 classes. They're called light, medium, and heavy, and it's kind of descriptive of just what they are, right? They are light, medium, and heavy. Light is more of light, I guess, is a faster class that has low health, but has a lot of really good utility. Dude, this video is crazy. So, I gotta try some of this stuff out.
Yeah.
But yeah, light has can be, depending on what equipment you equip, it can be a long range sniper, a really close sort of ambush style gameplay, hit and run type stuff, or you can play as medium, which is sort of in the middle of the road thing where you don't have too much health, but you don't have too little health, and you also have a nice balance of speed. And then there's heavy, who has a lot of health, a lot of ability to create barriers and other structures for defense, and but is a lot slower. So those are kind of the 3 things. There's a lot of variety in equipment that's pretty cool. Like there are jump pads, there are zip lines, there are defibrillators. Those things can be equipped by mediums. The heavies can equip barricades that they can put down, or a dome shield that they can deploy, or a rocket launcher for destruction. Lights can equip a vanish bomb that causes them to go invisible temporarily, or what else they got? They got a stun gun that causes people to get stunned, obviously, and prevents them from ADSing. I think it also prevents people from using their abilities as well, or capturing deposits and things like this. There are some equipment can be equipped by all classes, like gas grenades and pyro grenades and normal grenades, I think, as well. Things like this. Every class has a specialization you can equip, and there are, I think, 3 per class. So these are things that really shake up your play style like quite a bit. So, for example, one of them for the heavy that I like to use is what's the character in Overwatch? I'm blanking on him. It's like a giant shield essentially that you put in front of you. It's like for Fernando from Paladins. I don't remember the name of the equivalent in Overwatch, but it's like a big giant shield you put in front of you, or you can get a goo gun where it like shoots this goo stuff that you can use to create barricades. Or you can get this one, I forget what it's called, but you just kind of do a charge and attack everything in your path. And yeah, there are cool specializations for other classes as well. Aside from that, there's a lot of variation in weapons. The heavy has everything from a Lewis gun to a flamethrower to a sledgehammer, right? And the light and a sniper are various SMGs or throwing knives or katana. Medium can have a AK or a oh my gosh, this tech is crazy. That is definitely something really patched out. That one's not acceptable, I'm pretty sure. Infinite travel glitch, I guess. Interesting. But yeah, there's lots of weapons and things like that, and lots of tech, as you can see, to discover, I suppose. Yeah, that's that for gameplay. I think I finally finished gameplay. I think I didn't forget anything this time. So, moving on to things like sound design and audio. In terms of the soundtrack, it's very barren. There's not much of it ever in the game. I don't think there's any music that plays aside from right before the game's about to end. There's a little thing that plays, and right when the match starts, something plays. Just like kind of before the match, a song plays. The main menu also has a song as well. It's a very simple jingle. It's nothing crazy. It's whatever, I guess. It works thematically, but yeah, that's really all there is for music, I think. Aside from that, in terms of the audio, everything sounds really good. There's good spatial audio. It's very clear to hear where things are coming from, and even if they're in buildings versus outside of buildings, it's not the best I've heard in terms of interiors and exteriors, but it's not bad at all for sure. So, yeah.
Yo, 909 Crime says this vid maybe install the game for real. Yo, let's do a trio. I'm so hyped. We should do a trio.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, 100%.
I wonder if this game has crossplay too. I'm not actually sure. Cross-platform gameplay.
Yeah,
but I was just saying, an interesting thing as well. But I don't think it does. I feel like I would notice people playing on console controllers when I'm spectating them. I haven't noticed that. So, yeah. What else? I was about to say something about something that was unique as well. Oh yeah, something that's unique is that
a guitar?
Yes. So
use a guitar as a weapon.
So the weapon is a sledgehammer, but you can apply skins to it that you have to buy or whatever as part of the live service model, and so the guitar is one of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I forgot to say it again.
See that. So a couple of years ago, I was flying. And I bring my flutes with me, and my carry-on bag.
Mm.
And I guess the TSA flagged my flute, but specifically at the head joint of my flute, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the agent she takes it out, right? And she, doesn't know what it is. She puts her hand on the mouthpiece, which is like the worst thing you could do. But anyway, so she asked me what it is, right? I'm like, as part of it's my flute head joint. Didn't understand what that meant.
It's a pipe bomb.
It's part of my flute, right? Didn't mean anything to her. I said, it's a musical instrument. Didn't mean anything to her. So what I finally said was, it's kind of like a metal guitar that I blow into, and that worked. That worked. So she, put it back and handed me my bag. So that worked. Musical instrument didn't work, but guitar did. But now I'm seeing that a guitar is a weapon, so I guess I can't use that one anymore.
It's crazy because I feel like I don't know, man. That's even a.
Oh man.
I don't know. I feel like even if I didn't know what a flute was, and I heard musical instrument, I'm like, okay. Well, you said it's like a guitar. Like how?
It's a metal. It's like a metal guitar that I blow into. It's essentially what it is, right?
Ben, wow. You need to put pickups on your flute. Get an electric flute going.
Yeah. Oh man. Aren't those called those are electric saxophones, electronic wind instruments or whatever?
Oh, there is that, but you can also just put, you use a microphone. You can put them on your flute, or obviously in front of your flute. And at one point, George Crumb, who writes his piece called "Box by Leonai," which Voice of the Whale, which is really a beautiful piece, and I think he probably wrote this in 1972 or 73. Kind of a classic of music, avant-garde music that kind of has a move back towards simplicity at that time. Anyway, it's for voice and electric cello and electric flute. And by electric flute, it just means it has a microphone. But so back then, I guess that was what he wanted to call it, right? It sounds cooler to say electric flute, but just a flute with a microphone.
Yeah.
Great piece, though. I definitely recommend checking it out. But you need to read a little bit about what he's going for, and it was a really interesting piece, kind of about the cyclical nature of time and the life cycle of whales and evolution of whales and death of whales and is our destruction of the environment going to destroy humanity, that kind of stuff. But also this is like over 50 years ago now, so interesting to know. But
What'd you say it was called again?
Vox Bailini, or Voice of the Whale by George Crumb.
All right, written down.
Cool.
Okay. Right. I forgot what I was saying again. There's like something I forgot to say like 3 times in a row, and I still every time it like comes back, and then I forget it like 5 seconds later. Oh yeah, I was gonna talk about the interesting choice for the voice chat. So, voice chat, I don't remember. I think this might have asked me at the beginning of the game. I don't remember, but at least for me, I don't know if I said it like this on accident or something. But voice chat is disabled. And you have to press. Is this like this for you, Irving? Where like voice chat's disabled by default, you just press K at the beginning of the game or whatever, or anytime in the middle of the game.
I didn't even know there. Like the voice chat is so like unintegrated. I didn't even know there was voice chat.
Okay, yeah, there's a voice chat. It's like off by default, and you have to opt into it by pressing K in the middle of the match at some point, which is interesting.
Do you still have to push to talk, or like is it just?
I don't know. It probably has a setting for that, for switching between push to talk or always on voice activity. So
yeah.
Now, what's interesting is that I feel like with the theming of the fact that it's a game within a game, it's like right for the idea of an esport, right? But actually, as a resident esport expert, Irving, what do you think?
No,
so I have a controversial take here. Okay, I agree. Okay, why?
I think the aesthetic is like so perfect for it, but the gameplay isn't.
Yes.
It's just that at a high level, it's just not going to be intelligible to a general audience.
That's not exactly what I was thinking, but that's maybe.
Well,
Actually,
I think I think a lot in terms of. I think a lot in terms of general audience esports. I don't think about esports within niches like super niches. Most people, if you don't understand that statement, if you think, what are you talking about? Most esports are basically confined demographically to those who play the game, and even then they don't typically capture, most of the time, not even a majority of the people who play the game will ever even watch a singular match of the esport. So it's like it's like niched within even the community of the game, of people who play the game. So I tend to think in terms of like, well, how do you break that sort of mold? And one of the criteria is definitely intelligibility at a high level. Everyone can still understand basketball even when it's played by the best people, right? Like it's still intelligible. So that's what I mean.
Yeah, and that makes a lot more sense because I was thinking sort of like intelligibility relative to like somebody who, I don't know, plays shooters or something like that. But I suppose we're talking about a more broad audience, and this is not the most
even
intelligible
gamers
game,
in general. Even if that's your general audience, like gamers in general, it's still most like a lot of gamers just will not. I mean, just think about your average gamer. Like most people who are listening to this aren't necessarily that. It won't be intelligible to them either.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I was thinking more of the fact that I don't think you could. It's just not a fair game.
That too.
Between getting third partied and other things, and bad spawns, and if you're playing ranked, where like sometimes you'll have no team attacking you because they're all going for the other vault, and you just kind of have a free game, free victory. So, I just don't think it's fair enough. It's too much randomness that can't be accounted for. So, yeah. But thematically it is interesting. But yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I think it's pretty cool to be I think it's gonna have a really decent impact on the gaming industry. I don't think it's like industry shattering or anything like that. I don't think it's gonna be like, we all have to reinvent the way we do things or whatever. But I think it's one sort of another example of, hey, maybe we should have games that run well, so it's kind of pushing that standard is kind of nice. But also, other than that, the interesting, just unique, the willingness to take risks, like the risk of having like such non-standard gameplay, such non-standard
it's so
game modes,
good. It feels so refreshing.
Yeah, it's not like, we're playing team deathmatch or capture the flag again, what I'm saying, in a different game,
Yeah.
It's like, no, like there is no game that has this game mode in it, I mean, yeah, really, I don't know. I can't. The closest thing I can kind of think of is like it's like kind of like Rush, kind of in a way, just barely. There's the idea that you need to like there's a box you need to press E on for a long time. That's kind of where the
but even then, like,
and,
if you play tournament, it's so different. The gameplay changes so much. Like, it's basically a different game mode.
right, yeah. So, yeah, it took risks there. It took risks on the destruction. Although I feel like once they managed to do with it, like the risk was in the R&D, but like once they were able to do it, it's like I mean, I got to use it. You know,
They had a smooth launch as well. They had a great launch.
Yeah, no. I mean, my game used to crash. Like it's probably crashed 3 times at this point. So, you know, it's not the greatest thing. No, it's not. There was a time where I basically never crashed in the game, so I don't really know what's going on anymore. These games, but it's not as like egregious as some other games. It worked. It was not like a lot of glitches and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, good launch. No complaints there. And yeah, but yeah, I'm interested to see how games like Battlefield will sort of like because they are try to like oh well, this game did this thing kind of well, so we'll try it as well. We'll probably do it worse, but it's not gonna end up being bad. I'm not gonna say the next Battlefield's gonna be bad, but they might try out to implement some interesting ideas that from this game that don't necessarily stack up quite well. But I'm hoping for more destruction. And people are saying that there'll be more destruction in Battlefield because there was a job listing for DICE, or I don't know if it was DICE or some probably DICE. I don't think it was EA generally speaking. I think it was DICE specifically, and it was talking about the fact that they would have I don't know, it was like some, I don't know what the word was, but essentially saying they would have like the best destruction, or like the most comprehensive destruction, something, the most something destruction. I forget what it was, but people are thinking like, and now, it's like, okay, this seems to indicate that this job opening seems to indicate that they're actually going back to having a lot more destruction, potentially because of the finals. So, yeah, that'll be super interesting to see. This game kind of
wouldn't it be like obvious for them to just make a 2043 and then try to like make it crazy like this?
No. Because 2042 is tainted, so they can't do 2043.
Wait, why is it tainted?
People don't like it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know that. But, like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if they want ultimate freedom, like, sci-fi is just a blank box. You can do whatever the heck you want with it. So, yeah.
They could do like, this kind of like, this gives me Hardline vibes, Battlefield Hardline.
Oh, yeah.
Thematically, it's about money, right? Like, getting all the money or whatever. And it's kind of like, Hardline is not going to be taken seriously like that. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, it's very obviously like, obviously Battlefield is never representative of real life at all, right? But it's even more obviously more so, more comical, I think is how to put it, I guess. Yeah. But, yeah, so, I don't know, they can make a Hardline too. I mean, I enjoyed it. I guess it wasn't.
That's a hot take.
I don't know. It just like, I mean, it was fine. Like I like the idea of it being less grand scale, but still having the grand feeling to it. But it was still smaller. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, that's it's interesting. So yeah, that's all I have to say though. So I can't wait to see how this game progresses in the future. Hopefully, it doesn't get worse. Only gets better from here. I hope so. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Concur. Sweet. Yeah, let us know what you think actually, primarily, y'all who are watching right now, I see some people watching on our platforms. Definitely, there's a link in the description to our Discord. We can form parties, and we can have some finals. Maybe we can convince Ben to join our finals trios, and maybe we could do some fun stuff. So, I think you can do private servers or something like that. I think I remember seeing.
I don't know if you can. Can you?
Maybe not. Okay.
I haven't seen.
It'd be fun to do like a 3v3 mixed media style.
That would be good. Yeah, that'd be cool. But even the when you go into practice mode or whatever, it seems to be hosted on their servers. So.
Oh, that's bizarre.
Well, probably because the damage actually does the destruction probably is computationally heavy enough that they do not want you doing it on your own computer. Is my guess. Probably a lot of threads going on. big CPUs, and also I wonder how. Well, I suppose the hard part about streaming doing destruction on the server side and streaming it to your computer, so everyone has to have the same. Everyone's computer has to receive the data about where all the different parts are and stuff like that to sync up, and a lot of moving physical parts together like that is very hard to get going because a lot of people don't realize how actually how fake what they are seeing is when they're playing multiplayer video games. There's so much interpolation. Like if you don't use interpolation, like it's just the raw, like, using the raw data, it's gonna look so jittery. Like people are gonna be teleporting around basically, like practically in their in their spots. But you have to use interpolation to actually get things to look smooth and stuff like that. And it's very hard to. It's easy enough when you have object moving from point A to point B and just interpolate over that. It's very simple. But having so many different pieces that you don't know their actual current position, and you have to somehow figure out how to try to interpolate them, interpolate the position, or depending on if you are you're doing predictive behavior, or if you're doing after the fact, after you receive the fact, you're interpolating. It really depends. If you're doing after the fact interpolation, it's a lot easier. But if you're not, it can get very difficult very fast. I remember watching a video on how Rocket League physics works, and man, for such a simple game that's just 3v3 with a 3v3 cars with a ball, it is so complicated how the networking works because it just has to be so precise, and their approach is very interesting. So, yeah.
By the way, Rocket League is an example of a game that's intelligible at a high level.
Yeah, it's car soccer.
Yeah. Anyone can look at it and still understand, I mean, they may not understand the techniques, but like that's the same with every sport, right? Like you can understand the game, but not necessarily understand the granular technique, and that makes it still watchable and enjoyable. So,
all right,
sweet. All right, shall we do a speed round of arguing with Reddit?
Sure. Was that longer than usual? How long did I take? We started at 8:30, right?
Oh yeah, it was fine.
Okay, we're good.
It's more like we started late, so I'll just speed through mine real quick. All right, so if you're new to the show, we do this in segments, and the next segment will be arguing with Reddit, and I'm a filmmaker, and I will be reacting to all kinds of shenanigans from Reddit and beyond, most of which I haven't seen. I'll see you on the other side of the transition. Here we go. And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. We're back for our next segment, which is Arguing with Reddit. Not going to do too much introduction, just our names. My name is Irving Nestor. I'm a media composer. Wow. This is the second time I've done that. I don't know why I do that. I think I look at Ben or something, and then my brain just starts saying what Ben says. But I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello, and I'm a flute player and media composer.
And I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and a video game developer.
Right, so let's switch views here. And for those of you who are new to Arguing with Reddit, I will be reacting to hot takes that my co-hosts have found for me, mostly from Reddit, usually from Reddit. And if you have your own hot takes while I'm going along and doing that, please feel free to drop them in there, even if we can't get through them in this show. In a future show, we will definitely react to them, and that goes for my co-hosts too. So if you think of something to ask Ben or Nathan, feel free to do so. So with that being said, I will grab the first one here. Let's see. This one, I'll do this one. So this one's from Ben, if you want to explain.
Yeah. Basically just what the title says. It's if you don't like a critically acclaimed movie, should you give it a rewatch? This person says they basically just started in the past year kind of getting into film, and they watched a lot of things that are either beloved or highly praised, and they enjoyed most of them, but they're disappointed in particular in Citizen Kane, Interstellar, and Fight Club. And they say, because I didn't think these movies were bad, and I think the problem is just with me. Should I give these films another chance?
That's interesting. So it sounds like, as you were first talking about it, I had one particular reaction. As you continue to describe the person, I was like, oh, maybe different. And the reason I say this is because a lot of times people will dismiss sort of quote-unquote classic movies and sort of not give them the right chance because their palates aren't quite ready to accept it, or maybe they didn't watch it with an open enough attitude, sort of expectation of a very specific kind of thing. With this person, it sounds like they watch tons of movies, and they vibe with a lot of classic films. It's just these particular films aren't particularly for them. So my suggestion, this happens to me too, right? So my suggestion is just think about why, and if the answer is articulable, why, then you're probably just like, it's probably just not film for you, right? Like if you watch Citizen Kane, which in my opinion is one of the best films ever made, I think overlived it. I mean, I guess I was skeptical of the hype because it's such an overhyped movie. So I guess I maybe underhyped it in my mind. Then I saw it in a theater and I like died. So
it is a very good film. I think I watched it with my family during COVID.
Gotcha.
I think that's when I watched it. Great film, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic film. Highly recommend. But if you didn't like it, like, you know, I always take the hard line, and you know, I always can like sort of feel the eyes rolling whenever I say this, but I don't care. I take the hard line that beauty is objective, but that doesn't mean that there are no subjective components. Just like any other, there's a lot. I mean, that goes for almost everything observable in life, right? Like to different degrees. So like, if I observe a particular color, my sort of impression of that color might be slightly different, even other than necessarily biological components, right? Like, and that's sort of a subjective intake. We could go to like, we could get super philosophical with it and like talk about the problem of the mind-body problem and stuff like this, but like I won't go there. But instead, I'm going to say that like one of the cool things about having classics in any art form is it kind of gives you this safe tradition of where to go to see where other people with trained palates have found good things. And usually, and a lot of times, and particularly with film in particular, they end up being like pop culture relevant as well in a lot of different ways. So Citizen Kane, you'll find references to Citizen Kane, you know, Rosebud, right? Like you'll find these references like kind of out in the wild, right? And that should indicate to you that this was so penetrating that it like reached like it like infiltrated English, you know what I mean? Like, or like whatever. So that's just an indicator though. That doesn't mean that's an indicator of maybe something objective about the thing, maybe, right? And maybe there's some cases where that shouldn't be the case or whatever you might think. But it's just a call to sort of think about it and just be like, okay, well, why do these other people like it then? You know, and sometimes you can just say, well, I really respect why those people like it. I kind of get that. I kind of intellectually understand why it is, but like I just don't personally find it that compelling. And that's your subjective, yeah, that's your opinion. That's totally fine. You know, like you don't have to vibe with everything everyone else vibes with. There's a lot of subjective components to enjoying a film. And there's a lot of films that I rate really highly on my Letterboxd. Follow me at IJROX on Letterboxd, or search my name on Letterboxd. There's a lot of those films that I enjoy sort of, it's more of a heady experience than it is like my heart's into it. And, you know, perhaps if it was like about like what film would I reach to next, I probably wouldn't reach to them, but they're just so fascinating in other ways. So like, you know, basically, you're not broken. You're fine. You are simply human, like every other human, and that's totally fine. So there's that one. I think Kai dropped me a hot take here. So he said, here's a Gina Carano related hot take I saw today for Irving if he wants it. I'll open it and then I'll decide. Well, that was cheating. If I open it, I have to react to it, of course. Let me go to Discord real quick and grab the link. Stream chat. Copy link. There we go. Let's see what's inside. So I can't pull this up. Actually, maybe I can pull this up. My thing is formatted for Reddit, so I don't know if it'll come up properly. Or if I will be locked out anyway. Let's see. Oh, there we go. That looks pretty good. What? There we go. Clicked on the picture by accident. Okay, so this says, I know this isn't a popular take, but Disney didn't fire Gina Carano because she's a conservative. They also fired Chuck Wendig, I don't know who that is. And he's one of the dumbest leftists ever. They simply don't want their employees creating Twitter drama. It's all PR. The lawsuits will go nowhere. Yeah, so this is like a lot more complicated than that, unfortunately. I don't know about the merits of the lawsuits, simply because I haven't read any of the source material. So I don't know what substance is in there in terms of a lawsuit. I'll leave this up. Because off the bat, like just off my top of my head, there are very few things you can sue your employer for in terms of getting fired. And that has to do with a lot of things, like the Civil Rights Act and the 19th Amendment and a whole bunch of topics that I don't want to exhaust here, especially because I haven't actually read anything in the complaint. But lawsuit aside, in terms of like cultural context, you can bring up one example, right? But like almost every personality that I could possibly think of who's a strong personality on Twitter says very strong things, and not infrequently. Like, when I say strong things, I mean like, you know, pretty strong things. I mean, Twitter is not a place where, I mean, I don't have a Twitter persona or anything like that. I lurk on there occasionally for very particular use cases, so maybe I'm just not in touch with the right spaces or something like this. But
just for reference, Wendig, and I knew I recognized the name. I was trying to remember where I heard him from. He wrote some of the Star Wars Aftermath books, and he was working and did the Force Awakens novel adaptation, and was working on the comic series The Shadow of Vader when he was abruptly fired, and he claimed that it was because of his social media posts with Disney thought were too negative and had too much vulgarity in them.
Okay, then that makes it even worse. Vulgarity. That's a lot of vulgarity. If it's just vulgarities, I mean, and this is me just defending Wendig as well, because I don't know what his particular case is, but like, it's completely conceivable that in both of these cases, that the particular reasons are exactly that. They're particular instead of just general principles being applied. So if you think of someone like Alec Baldwin, example par excellence of a very bombastic person in general, says a lot of strong statements. You know, it's hard for me, especially prior to the Rust shooting, so just subtract that equation, that out of the equation. It's hard for me to see that Disney would simply not hire him if he were to play some sort of Star Wars character. Not likely. In fact, I don't even know. Maybe he has been in something Disney lately. I have no idea. But says bombastic things all the time. So it's like, what are the real reasons? And perhaps the reason for the lawsuit in this particular case is not even the validity of the complaint, but trying to get to discovery, right? There's this is a common tactic with lawsuits, right? It's lawfare instead of like a sort of get to the bottom of like who needs to be made whole or something like this. The point instead is to sort of be able to use the lawsuit as a weapon against, you know, what a particular target. And you might think that this is you might make a general principle out of just hearing that, saying that this is never right. And I would caution you to do that, because there's a lot of cases, perhaps some famous ones, where this is used to an effect that perhaps you'd probably agree with. So my point in that whole thing is to say, I don't know enough about this particular case to comment. That's, I guess, where I'm getting at. So I don't have an opinion. Kai says, in fairness, I've read some of Wendig's blog. The Chuck Wendig standard of vulgarity is not what your grandmother means. Ah, okay. So you support this lawsuit because you want Disney to die. Yeah, I want Disney to die at all costs, obviously, and no matter what the means are, no, I'm just kidding. No, of course the means matter, but I do want Disney to die. Yes, that's all I got to really say about that. Let's see here. Let's see. The next one here I will pick is Nathan's, if you want to explain.
Okay, so this one is, let me pull it up. This is r/movies. It says, "Why does Pirates of the Caribbean just hit so different?" It's I don't remember the entire thing, but the person says he never watched 4 or 5. To be clear, he said he heard they're not good. I also have not watched 4 or 5 because I've heard the same thing. He said that yeah, he finds it captivating. He finds the aesthetic captivating. The CGI is really good, despite it being fairly old. And it feels like the only pirate story to really use the whole mythology of the sea that was so prevalent. So yeah, why is it so good?
Yes, and that actually reminds
especially
me
for real quick, especially for a like, you know, what kind of like it feels like it shouldn't be because you see the Disney logo and it's like this could probably gonna be mid. It's a pirate story. It's Disney. It's probably gonna be okay, but nothing crazy, you know.
Yeah, this actually this is funny because that reminds me. Given the last thing is Johnny Depp had his own controversy and he was immediately fired from Disney, right? So same company, immediately fired. And then you have Amber Heard, right? So there was the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial, which I actually watched in its entirety. So if you wanna have a debate on it, yeah, I have the knowledge. It was a highly, the reason why I watched it, by the way, is it was at the time, it's probably the case of the decade. You know, like when I say that, I mean it's one of those cases that got so much public attention in terms of watching the literal case, like not just in terms of like the surrounding story, but like in terms of like people watching the actual trial. You know, it's kind of hard to get people to do that. And the reason why is because court is generally boring and there's so much fluff and nonsense in court cases that no one wants to sit through. But in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, it was one of those rare trials where it was entertaining always. And it just kept getting more entertaining. Now, that's weird to get entertained by other people's life dramas where fingers were literally cut off and, like, you know, yes, Johnny Depp's finger was cut off. If you didn't know. You know, there's bottles flying everywhere and yada, 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 yada. You know, it's that kind of thing that everyone kind of gets their eyes sort of attached to. So anyway, the reason I go back to this is because Amber Heard's post-trial, so if you didn't know, Amber Heard lost the trial like by like a literally record amount. She lost it, I think the damages were something like $30 million, which is probably a record amount for defamation, maybe in history. Which is to say, I don't think that's right. Normally, when you have record amounts, it should be a case in which it is abnormally bad, if you get what I mean. But I don't know that it's abnormally bad in like the way we think of general society, if that makes sense. But like in terms of like domestic abuse cases, right? It's kind of, there are other domestic abuse cases that involve defamation that would look pretty similar, if that makes sense. And then, of course, you get into the fact, well, they're celebrities, and so they make a lot more money, and so compensation for lost funds. I totally get all of that. But the thing is, normal people don't typically get that sort of one-to-one computation like Johnny Depp got. That's all technicalities. That's all technicalities. The real thing to say here is that Amber Heard lost the trial for good reason. And it was very obvious to anybody who actually watched the trial, you know, very obvious that she lied about some of the most horrendous things that a human could possibly lie about. And I can't even say them out loud. They almost want to make me vomit, the kinds of things she lied about. And it's very obvious that she lied about them because there are certain things that are not liable about because of physics and other things. Anyway, so she lost the case because she lied. Yet, it took a very long time for her to lose her corporate sponsorships. And then she regained some after she lost them. And it's like, okay, well, what happened to Johnny Depp post sort of thing? Like, what happened to his sort of corporate relationships? They literally, all of them died just from an accusation, right? So, like, this is like sort of if you don't understand the cultural landscape and why we're arguing over these things, that is why, right? It's like, why is that? And the same corporation has involved Disney, but maybe there's some sort of general corporatist sort of thing that we're exploring, because it also involves people like Dior and like, all the other Hollywood studios, etc. So that's kind of going back because that reminded me of that example. Anyway, back to Pirates of the Caribbean specifically. Johnny Depp basically makes the franchise. If you didn't know, the original conception of Pirates of the Caribbean was completely serious, which is very bizarre. Like,
I forgot about that, yeah.
It was supposed to be melodramatic, which sounds like a disaster. Definitely not the right take with the swashbuckling pirate, sort of theme on like a Disney explicitness level, if that makes sense, right? So Johnny Depp basically makes the entire franchise by forcing Disney to go in a less serious direction, by basically changing the whole character of Jack Sparrow. And he did this by force. Like, he literally showed up to set, and like, it's funny because I know this now, not just from his own words. I know this because people testified to it in court because it related to damages, right? So like, what is he worth, right? But producers came in and testified to like times on set where he basically came on and said, "I'm not reading this line this way. I'm reading it my way." And we're going to change the meaning of the scene entirely, basically, to be this. And as a director, I would hate him for that. But perhaps in this particular case, it worked out really well for Disney because it changed the entire tone of the entire series. It allowed us to make this more family digestible, like, simply because, like, what kind of family wants to go to, like, a LARP of what a pirate's life is like in a melodramatic fashion? Like, it just doesn't sound very appealing. Because, I mean, isn't that fun for kids? And then our adults are going to take it seriously. It's like, you kind of miss both, like, you miss both crowds with that sort of concept. And if you think of other Disney movies, you can imagine how poorly that might have went.
I'm guessing that it was meant to be more meant for actually older audiences, because one, there's a lot of death. Like, it's a lot. And like, not like death off scene type thing, like death on, like you can just see, Also, one thing that always like sticks with me is at the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, Davy Jones, like in his first appearance, I don't know if you remember, but he's talking to like some captured pirates, and he offers them, the ability to work on a ship in exchange for essentially immortality, right? But the reason he gives is so that they can avoid judgment in the afterlife. I was like, that's a pretty like advanced like thing to say for some random children.
Well, it's a pirate story, Any
Right.
pirate story is going to be like, clean enough, truly, for children.
But isn't it like an automatic? Like, if you live forever, of course you're not going to have to face eternal punishment, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think
Assuming that there's no end of the world, but I mean, at this point, we have people, immortal pirates running around. So like,
I think he's not actually. I don't think they have like a really long contract, because he says quote actually he says quote postpone judgment. So I think it's just a really long contract.
Yes. In any case, so the story's just really fun. Jack Sparrow basically makes these films, and the direction, it was basically co-directed by Johnny Depp, if you understand what was happening behind the scenes, and he kind of steered the direction of the entire thing. It allows us to have really dramatic moments while also having separate moments of fun, meaning the drama and the fun aren't commingled in such a way that we're allowed to have moments where we can take themes super seriously, like the love arc between, what's her name, Elizabeth and Will. Yes.
Turner.
Very like mature sort of like way of like digesting a love theme, and very, very, very serious, while also having moments where the action is driven in very fun manners, and we have subplots that are sort of driven in fun manners that are separate from that. Meaning, you could have those heartfelt moments where the cast is really just banging on all 10 because the whole cast is fantastic. You know. And you want to cry, and you could have a moment right after later, not commingled, Marvel. And you could have that moment later where it's just a pure fun pirate story, and that's kind of where a lot of good family movies live. It felt classic that way, so I think that's the special sauce. Which is to say, it's not necessarily that different other than other sort of classic family films, other than the cast and the tone and the art design are just all banging on 10. They're all doing a fantastic job. So, yeah, I agree with it does hit different. It does hit different. Okay. Last one here is from me. Let's see here. I don't even remember what I picked for myself. So, I guess this is going to be Raw.
Oh wait, one real quick thing I wanted you to touch on there is why is the CGI there so good and it's not that old? Or sorry, it is fairly old.
Yes.
Compared to like say Marvel movie where it's like a lot of this stuff doesn't really seem to hold up very well for modern times.
Oh yes, that is a whole deep rabbit hole. It has to do with Hollywood's allocations to VFX teams and the way VFX teams have been compensated over time. So, if you didn't know this, the studio system tends to use VFX houses to do VFX for things. They don't do them in house, like 99.9% of the time. The only example of this would be the only other example of this would be kind of Lucasfilm and ILM, right? Like, kind of being it's basically the same sort of entity, especially as you go historically. ILM is Industrial Light and Magic, and the problem with you going this route is they're basically trying to Fiverr their VFX. This is the best way I can describe this, right? They're like trying to Fiverr their VFX away. And so they try to take advantage of cheap labor overseas by hiring VFX houses that really want the leg up. So imagine Disney calls you. You're a VFX house of 100 people. You're doing some like Bollywood show, right? Let's say, right? And they're offering you double what you normally would take for a whole season of said Bollywood show, right? Just as an example. And if you don't think Bollywood is VFX, everything has VFX. So VFX is everywhere. So, and then Disney comes in and says, we want you to do like literally 1/10 of the VFX work for Black Panther 2, right? We just want you to do 1/10 of it for double what you would have done a season of that Bollywood film. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna quit all your current contracts because Disney called. Right? You're gonna say yes, so you're gonna have to cut all your current contracts because you need all the labor possible. You're gonna hire 50 to 100 more people to get it done properly. You're gonna upgrade all your systems. You're gonna put a lot of capital behind it because you think this is your break, right? And then Disney does scene changes, scene edits. They actually approached you at the end of their post-production pipeline instead of at the beginning. So you weren't even involved in the VFX pipeline from the front end, which is where you want to be. In fact, you're supposed to have a VFX supervisor on set. In fact, for films like Marvel films, you're supposed to have like 10 of them on set who are like doing a lot of advanced geometry, lighting calculations, reflection calculations. Like, it's a very intense job to be a VFX supervisor. And yes, they still have those, right? But their work is completely useless practically because the pipeline isn't properly fixed because they're trying to Fiverr away right their VFX problem. They're trying to cheap out on it. So you're like, dang, I got like millions of dollars. This is so fantastic. Then you realize with all your capital expenditures, your overtime now that you have to pay people to show up to get to the deadline, and with all the brutality that Disney is sending your way, and this is not a Disney-specific problem, by the way. This the entire industry has gone this way with VFX. all of this, plus everything is being VFX'd a lot more than they used to be. So you used to do a lot more practicals, right? Nolan does a lot of practicals still, and he's probably an edge case, away from that because he's got sort of creative license with the Hollywood system. And all his VFX look a lot better, right? So not only did it look a lot better, but once it was done on set, like 80% of the work was done. So, it's just baked into the scene, right? And it looks good because they spent so much time experimenting because they knew the shot, they knew the angle, and they knew how to prepare for it, etc. With this, it's like making it up as you go. It's like, well, we want Thanos to punt Captain America off screen. It's like, well, how did you do that on set? Well, we didn't. We just had him kick her. But we've decided that we don't want Captain America to actually be in any of the rest of the finale because we want to absolutely disrespect our fans to the nth degree by punting her off screen. That would make us very happy. And the VFX studio says, well, okay, that means I'm going to have to create a rag doll, like a 3D rag doll, and then I'm going to have to like match it to Brie Larson, and then I'm going to have to do all this like hair physics. Although actually she had no hair, oddly enough. Anyway, and then we're going to have to match the camera angles, for which there are no calculations for the reflections, the geometry. There's nothing. Literally creating it from scratch. Just an animated movie, basically, on top of a real plate. Imagine that's the reality of what you're doing, and you go bankrupt. Because every single one of these VFX houses overseas goes bankrupt after working with a big Hollywood company. And I wish they would just stop taking the contract. Stop taking the contract. Just say no. Either that or ask for quadruple the money. That's how you be a baller, right? Like, you just say, I'll do it, but like multiply it by 4, and then we'll talk, And those companies would be a lot better served by that. And unfortunately, there's just another hopeful company, because there's so many VFX houses who say yes and then get destroyed. So that's why this happens. That's why the VFX these days look horrible. Lack of mixture with practicals, and a lack of a good job being done because of the strenuous work conditions. So there you go.
I see.
Yeah. Yep. Why have movies regressed in VFX? It's just crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, this next one is from r/shortfilm, and it says, restarting my film's journey, need advice. And now I remember what this is, so I'll just spare you the exact details and just sort of go to the point here. So this person hasn't been doing filmmaking for 10 years for personal reasons, and now they're back at it. So they've been doing photography ever since, but not really anything to do with film. They had made over 20 short films, but they have never been on set. So they've only done their own experiments, done their own stuff, student films. They were a film student at one point. And so it ends here with, currently I'm in pre-production of several short films I plan to make this year. Nothing crazy, just something to get my feet wet again. The inspiration I lost years ago is back in full force. The thing that scares me the most is not knowing what the hell I'm doing in front of people who knew what the hell they are doing, if that makes sense. Here's my YouTube channel, yada yada. Constructive criticism is welcome. Okay, but basically, advice in this particular situation. The only reason I picked this one, because I feel like I've reacted to someone talking about like entering the film scene or whatever before, but the reason I picked this one because it's interesting, because the person hasn't been doing it for 10 years, and it's like, okay, what happens to a filmmaker who doesn't make a film in 10 years? Well, you could be a Malik, just kind of appear and start making films that are like twice as good as the films you were making before your hiatus. You could be that, but and I actually suspect he probably was practicing with material that we'll probably never see before he came back from his hiatus. Maybe he never stopped filmmaking. Who knows? But that aside, I think the most interesting part about this question is not necessarily do you have the ability or the chops to do it, because it sounds like you probably do. I mean, if you're in pre-production for several short films, I mean, you're a baller. I mean, you made 20 short films. That's awesome. Like, you sounds like you know what you're doing. And even though you haven't been on a set, that's not necessarily indicative. Although I would say it's extremely important that you try to do that if you're trying to run a set in a way that makes people happy, because you can easily make people very unhappy by not understanding what norms are and like what it feels like to be in a different position on set. But that stuff aside, because I suspect that stuff won't actually be as bad for this person as they might think. I think in 10 years, the biggest thing is technology. Like, I was thinking, I was like, 10 years ago, oh my gosh, like 10 years ago, the camera technology was way different. And the lighting technology was way different. And I think this actually could be a source of inspiration. If there's someone out there who's listening to this who hasn't done film in a very long time, and you feel a lack of inspiration, at least for me, I'm a kind of a tech head when it comes to filmmaking. I'm definitely like a camera department kind of guy, and I obsess over that kind of stuff, the equipment, etc. I'm a nerd with that stuff. But even if you're not, just go look up, like, if you're completely detached, let's say, from the camera scene, go look up what low light performance on cameras are that are relatively cheap these days are. You can literally make films that no one's ever seen before. And that's, like, that in of itself is so inspiring. Like, the technology is inspiring. Like, imagine you can shoot a film in conditions where your normal eyes cannot see. Does anyone know what the dark actually looks like? You understand what I'm trying to say? What does darkness look like? You know?
Wait, wouldn't it show up on camera though, as like just not dark, right?
Well, what does that look like? Like, if you look up low light footage, right, it will look kind of alien because we never see people. Let's say it's a moonlit night, right? Do you ever see how the moon actually casts shadows on things? In most cases, and what that looks like. You know, like that's not something you actually normally can see. You know,
right?
What about a foggy, icy night? Well, you have fake foggy, icy nights in films where you can see things like slasher films where they basically put a sun in there and then darken it in post to create the sort of dynamic lighting, which is totally valid. But like, what if you didn't do that? What if you took a completely different approach? Could be cool. I haven't thought about it, but maybe you could. Other things, lighting has gotten so much cheaper. Like, even since like a few years ago, it's gotten so much cheaper. It's fantastic. Lighting modifiers have become plentiful. You can find a lot of videos on lighting science that you couldn't find before on YouTube because of great DIY YouTubers. I literally watched the other day a transformative video from a very scientific perspective. This person's not a cinematographer. In fact, you might know this channel. It's called DIY Perks. I think Nathan's recommended some of his videos to me before. Yeah. He did a video a few years back on recreating sunlight. And he did it with techniques that, like, lighting people have understood how the sun works, and so they understood what it means to recreate sunlight. But there's not really a video you can go look to like explain it from the ground up scientifically, and then know how to sort of apply that from your cinematographical mind. So that's so exciting. Now maybe you can experiment with fake sunlight. I don't know, maybe you're making something more trippy, and you could use that to your advantage. Or maybe it would simply be cheaper to film everything at night, and you could just fake the sunlight in your particular scenario. So, the technology itself is so exciting. RGB lights have gotten so much better. Even like stabilizers and like how small they are, so you can fit in smaller spaces. The cameras have gotten smaller. Like, dude, 10 years ago. That's crazy. So I would just say, like, don't forget the tech. if you're looking for inspiration, don't forget the tech. This person's almost certainly like good to go. 10 years does not destroy the mind of a filmmaker, I'm sure. So yeah, go have fun. Basically, that's my take on that one. All right. Well, that's Arguing with Reddit. If you have your own hot takes you thought of last minute, well, the section's done now, but you can still put them in the chat on our Discord, link in the description. You can go to mixedmediapodcast.com, link on that side of the screen. And you can see links to our Discord on there, as well as our other platforms. And you can drop your hot take wherever the heck pleases you. We will see it, and we'll react to it in some future episode. So that's Arguing with Reddit. And next up, we have Ben talking about...
Orchestration and American in Paris.
Sweet. All right. Here we go.
Mixed Media Music.
All right, welcome to Mixed Media Music, the portion of the Mixed Media Podcast dedicated to all things music with a particular emphasis on classical music and on media music. My name is Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer, and I'm the main host for this segment, and I'll let my co-hosts introduce themselves.
So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
And I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
Okay, so today on Mixed Media Music, I want to talk a little bit about some orchestrational choices and things we can learn just from looking at Gershwin's American in Paris. Now, I don't know, we haven't talked a ton about Gershwin. We talked a little bit about his film, score for the film Shall We Dance, I think last year, but we haven't talked about Gershwin too much. George Gershwin, mostly kind of known, so he's starts out as kind of a pianist and Tin Pan Alley songwriter, very instrumental in the kind of creation of the modern Broadway musical. Best known, of course, for Rhapsody in Blue, and sort of this, we could say it's often described as an attempt to kind of fuse jazz and classical world and popular song of those three things. I don't know if that's necessarily how he thought of it, or if that's how modern scholars try and formulate it, what he was doing. But increasingly throughout his life, he turned more towards classical composition. He attempted to study with Ravel, and Ravel said basically, "No, I'm not going to teach you. I don't want to destroy your unique voice." And we definitely have talked a lot about Ravel and orchestration on this show. I'm sure you can go look that up. He eventually went to France and studied a little bit with Nadia Boulanger, who's kind of the Paris-based or French teacher of a bunch of American composers, other composers as well, but a bunch of American composers in particular in the early part of the 20th century went to study with her. And so he gained a lot of stuff from, about harmony and orchestral writing from her. So if you go back to like the original version of Rhapsody in Blue in 1924, he just wrote the two piano part for it, and Freddie Grofe orchestrated it. Grofe is also worth talking about. Fantastic arranger and orchestrator. But that's another discussion. But by 1928, when American in Paris, the tone poem, he writes it and it's first performed, he had gained a lot more skill with orchestral writing, and it shows in all of his later works, not just his orchestral stuff, but his musical theater stuff and his film scores. So this is one of those pieces that he's starting to mature as a composer. Granted, mature is kind of a bit of a misnomer. He died at the age of 39. Didn't live that long. But this is Gershwin. 28 years old. So starting to come into more maturity in his artistic voice. First written and first premiered in 1928, and you can actually find the original first recording of it with the ensemble and conductor that premiered it. If you look up, American Paris, Daniel Schilkret, you can find that recording. But this piece actually went through a couple of different versions. There's kind of the modern version, and it's been revised a little bit in terms of its orchestration by a guy named Frank Campbell Watson. And that's a version of a score that I actually have. Although I strongly recommend that you listen to the newer critical edition, which is part of, I think, the University of Michigan's Gershwin project, and with extensive research and restoration of original things by Mark Clegg, who's the director of the Gershwin Initiative. So I recommend listening to that. There's a recording. I actually put it in the link, or I'm sorry, the link in the stream media. If one of you could put that in the chat to the recording of the critical edition of it. That's what I recommend listening to. It's going to differ in a few ways from the modern edition. In a few orchestrational choices, and mostly in terms of expanding the material. There's a lot of extra stuff in the kind of back half of the piece that was eventually cut. But it's a good recording because you can really hear everything. You listen to like all the other famous recordings of, well, if you listen to the 1928 recording or 1929, 1928 recording, of course it's not that such great sound quality. You're not going to hear a lot of the, orchestral details. But even a lot of the other famous recordings, like the Leonard Bernstein recording, you just really can't hear a lot of really intricate stuff that he's doing. So I recommend this recording. It's very easy to hear pretty much everything that's going on. Okay, so that would be the reference I would have you go to, that recording. Okay, so again, without the ability to really pull up specific clips, we're just gonna kind of go through some general principles that I think are worth noting as anyone who's interested in orchestration, because it's a piece I think that's worth studying. It's a piece that it does have some elements of trying to fuse like American popular music with a little bit more serious orchestral writing, but not like so crazy, right? It's it's 1928. It's not too avant-garde. It's pretty melodic, very broadly popular piece. We get the musical American Paris named after the Gershwin musical film well after he passed away. It's in a popular piece. People tend to like it. Catchy melodically, and so I think it's a good piece, worth studying. It's probably not the most innovative piece out there, but it's pretty well done, and it's again I said it has a lot of broad popular appeal. So it's worth picking up some things from it. And so some of these are not quite orchestrational details, maybe a little bit more. Some of them are compositional details. These are just some things that I find interesting in the way that it is put together. So if you are interested in orchestration, right, the art of selecting what instruments play what and how you kind of fill in space, so to speak. It's a good piece to look at amongst many others, but it's kind of a pretty unique American sound. It's not the kind of thing you're going to find if you listen to like Rachmaninoff, really. Although Rachmaninoff did know Gershwin, there's a that definitely. I think I believe Rachmaninoff actually attended the first performance of Rhapsody in Blue. And I guess maybe I was the wrong example. Rachmaninoff does kind of later add a little bit kind of more Gershwin style brass to his last pieces, so not a good example. But I don't know, if you're going to listen to Mozart, you're not going to hear any orchestrational things like Gershwin. There we go. That's a clear example. Okay, so I would refer you to, pick up a score, although you're not going to get the actual critical edition score. But if you look at the Frank Campbell Watson version, which is pretty easily, you can pick it up pretty easily. That works pretty well with the critical edition, where you can hear a lot of stuff. And that should give you good idea. I mean, some of these points that I'm going to make. Okay, so first thing that stands out to me is pretty much every instrument gets a solo to be a solo voice, and with the exception of the basses, saxes don't really either. They're kind of just an additional color, and only in certain parts. And the bassoons don't really have a solo moment, I don't think. But the bassoons are really important. And pretty much every instrument is featured prominently, even if it's not necessarily a solo instrument. So I think that's got to be a pretty conscious choice on Gershwin's part to really feature all the different voices of the orchestra. And he does it in such a way that they're all, generally everything is pretty comfortable on every instrument. So he really knows, has a good sense of like what is comfortable, not too crazy, what is idiomatic for each solo instrument. Not just when it's a solo instrument, but in particular in its solo context, it's all very idiomatic. So he really has a very strong understanding of what each instrument does. And he wants to employ all those different colors. So something we can think about, and do I understand all these instruments well enough to use them as a solo voice in a kind of idiomatic way? And is that something I want? Do I want to have all these different kinds of voices in my works? Something I find particularly interesting. It probably occurs in a couple of spots, but there's one part in particular where there's a certain kind of like gesture that starts in the woodwinds and trill gesture, and my instinct, I think, is that this is the kind of thing that would work best on the flute. And if not, you could also maybe have flute and oboe. But he doesn't do that. He goes oboe first, just by itself, both oboes, and then he goes up an octave, and then the flutes come in and have the same gesture. Now, to me, what this is an example of, the way I look at it is, he's kind of holding something in reserve for when it's truly going to be important and or necessary. I think it would have worked just fine to have the flute do it first, but again, that's probably to me the most instinctive thing to do. But he doesn't do that. He has something else to it so that he can use the flute, the same idea, with a little bit more punch and octave higher later, which is a few measures later. And so the effective is, if he didn't do that, if he just has a flute and then a flute an octave higher, we don't get that slight color change that happens, that accompanies the leap up an octave. But by kind of holding the flute in reserve, kind of going against our expectations a little bit, we're able to have the same idea in two octaves and with two slightly different colors. The most important solo instrument, well, I think our attention, if you know the piece, is going to go to the big trumpet solo in the blues section. But really the most prominent solo instrument throughout is not the trumpet. The trumpet gets the longest solo, certainly. But the instrument that is the most important solo instrument, I think, is actually the English horn, and which is a bit odd. It's not the most common solo instrument. It tends to get most of its kind of solo use in Western music, orchestral music. It mostly is kind of in pastoral context. It has a kind of earthy sound to it. It just seems to fit with things that has to do with fields and shepherds. It's just kind of association that people have kind of given it. So here we have a piece that's about modern life American visiting modern, well, 1920s, late 1920s Paris. And it's about the city, right? We're gonna get to the taxi horns, the literal taxi horns in the piece. But this very pastoral instrument is given the most prominent solo voice, lots of solo passages throughout. And I think Gershwin's looking at it as having this kind of intimate quality to it. So kind of a good study of how the English horn can be used. We do get a brief tuba solo at the end of the blues section, which is pretty rare. That's kind of cool to pay attention to. Doesn't happen very often in a very melodic tuba solo. So we really don't get that very often in orchestral music. Now, this is a really great piece to think about writing for the horns. And how you're going to voice the horns. So he uses 4 horns. And often the horns are in closed voicing. So, the notes are pretty close to each other. And like if we had a triad, it might be literally stacked, right? Like root, 3rd, 5th, octave root, for example. Although a lot of times he's using 7th chords, but basically almost root position. All the horns are really close to each other. Very chordal writing, very tight chordal writing, instead of having the notes spread out way over the range of the horn. And that's not extremely common. We're often going to see, especially 4-part horn writing, a lot more open voicing. But that's not what Gershwin goes for. He wants a really tight, kind of dense middle register harmony. So that's interesting and worth studying. And he's also playing a lot with when the horns are stopped and when they're open. And so if you're not very familiar with the sound of stopped horn versus open horn, you can definitely hear it in this piece. He wants you to note the difference between when the horns are stopped, right, which means you stick your hand inside the instrument's bell, and when it's not. Okay. So a lot of great stuff to learn from the horn writing in particular. Yeah. So another really fascinating thing about this is, as I mentioned earlier, we've got 4 taxi horns. These are literally horns that he collected from various taxis in Paris. And he writes for them in a kind of treating them as though they're instruments, right? They're four different pitches, and he writes them kind of counterpoint pitch wise and rhythmic. They're kind of back and forth against each other. So they're not just kind of like a sound, general sound, like a fact that is there, but they're kind of treated musically. And you can definitely, I think the recording I sent gives you the most accurate reproduction of the original taxi horns that Gershwin brought over from France. Can
I play that? Or
it's no. I mean, it's going to be in the recording somewhere.
Okay.
But yeah.
I hate this. I hate that we can't play it.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of in the era where composers are really fascinated by sounds of modernity, especially sounds of the city, mechanical sorts of things. So it's kind of a trend, but it's maybe the most accessible use of that in classical music. A lot of these composers who played with this sort of stuff are on the more avant-garde end of things, and they're not things that the general audiences are going to listen to. But it is kind of a attempt to at taking things that occur, I don't want to say in nature, but in the real world, and bringing them into the concert hall in order to kind of recreate the real world in oral form. And that's a cool thing. If it's not something you're familiar with, it may be something worth. It's kind of like maybe entry point to exploring that sort of thing, right? Taking non-conventional sounds, and we don't have to treat them quite as instrumentally as Gershwin does, although you could. Now, of course, you get into kind of a philosophical question about, like, well, if you take sound of like a, I don't know, an ambulance siren, is that really music? But I think it's kind of here for effect. But he's also sidestepping that kind of philosophical question because he's literally using them in a very musical way. They're kind of a counterpoint and rhythmic and harmonic counterpoint with each other and with the orchestra. Yeah, okay. So definitely worth exploring that if it's not a concept you're familiar with. And so okay, so with his woodwind writing, there's a lot of both block chord writing, which is just almost like we might also call it planing. Like the three flutes were in a chord, and then we all move down by the same distance, so we're still in a chord, just a little bit lower. We call that block chord writing or planing. A lot of that, but even more, there's a lot of cool stuff, especially kind of the first tranquillo moment, and we a lot later give us again in the flutes and then in the violins, but kind of the harmonic thing that we're getting is not actually what's important. We get a lot of interesting harmonies, but what's really going on is that we have this sort of what we might call like motion creating harmony, where what's important is that like the instruments have their own pattern, both first and second flute, right? And second flute has its own descending pattern, and first flute has kind of its up and down pattern, and that repeats. And it's the motion between the two that are constantly creating this harmony. And I'm sure if you kind of this is not a hard thing to pick up on. If you're listening to this, you'll probably hear exactly what this is. It starts in the flutes and then it goes eventually in the violins and then back to the flutes. It's a cool way of writing. Thinking what we're about motion being most important and resulting harmonies, although they may be cool, that's not what is the focus. It's the motion that is driving things. Yeah. Now we get a lot of harmony from that sort of thing, and also from the fact that there are a lot of seconds in instruments. So like a C and a D, they're sort of right next to each other, and they're kind of dissonant on their own. And I know that like if I described it that way to someone like my mother, she'd said if I said a lot of seconds and like tritones, if I just play those intervals independently, out of context of the piece, she'd probably say, "Oh, this is probably really avant-garde piece, and I want to listen to it." But it's all handled very tastefully, and you probably don't even recognize that unless you're really listening for them, that all these kind of more dissonant harmonies are being used. Now, it's all these seconds and these kind of motion creating odd harmonies. Yeah. Now, kind of rounding this out, there's a lot of internal motion, and it's not always in the internal voices. So what I mean by that is that we kind of Gershwin wants a really thick texture, like 90% of the time, and so he's kind of got basic melody, kind of and harmony stuff going on, but he wants a lot of other things going on internally that are not kind of melody and harmony and bass line sort of thing. So there's a lot of that and lots of interesting patterns. And a lot of it is based on the main kind of rhythmic pattern that exists throughout the piece. It'll show up in all sorts of guises kind of internally, even if you might not even be aware of it. And a lot of its internal motion, it's keeping this piece, it's kind of propelling us forward at all times in this piece. And a lot of times, actually, not just in the like middle voices, the orchestra, but oftentimes in the upper voices. So kind of interesting. And there's some real. One way he kind of does this is I don't really have a good way of describing other than saying filling in things. Now, what that kind of means is that some places will have like, as an example, I'm not sure if it's an actual rhythm that he uses, but we'll have like a quarter note and a quarter note in our melodic instruments, and then we'll have another instrument that will play the same pitch on the downbeats, but we'll have 4/16 notes instead, right? And so it's going to kind of accent the melodic notes, but it's going to fill in the space in between those melodic notes, and this happens all over the place throughout the piece. Lots of filling in, these things, even if filling in things that aren't melodic, filling in kind of a secondary material that's already filling out the main stuff. So it's very full texture. It's really worth paying attention to the ways he's doing that and where he's doing it and why he's doing it. Some kind of good examples of transferring things as well, where what you might have. We have a part like for clarinet and lower strings, kind of filling in with the harmony that while the English horn is playing the melody, and then when the English horn it gets a little bit too high for the English horn, oboe takes over. Now, but with the same kind of harmonic part going on as before, but now it's just in the upper strings and the flutes. So technique worth understanding. And noting that this is done mostly to keep things in a comfortable range, although all these things could be done on any combination of instruments. He's trying to keep things in a more comfortable range for everyone. And sometimes where we have things that aren't comfortable, especially in some of our really fast, high woodwind runs, he'll have like the flutes play some really hard stuff up to like high C, but he'll also have the piccolo doubling that, so that in case it doesn't sound as nice on the flutes, it's quite easy on the piccolo playing with the same pitches. So we'll see that with like flute and piccolo and oboe and English horn, in moments where they have prominent things that go kind of up into their range. So again, kind of a basic thing, but worth noting. A lot of cool writing for bassoon. It's again an instrument that also kind of gets not used very much in a kind of soloistic context. Although it doesn't really play a solo role in this piece, bassoon is really prominent. Is kind of both bassoons kind of leading a lot of things, and it's really noticeable, especially in this recording that I have linked.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a great piece. Great piece.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. Sweet. We want to take us out?
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening to Mixed Media Music. And if you've been with us the whole time, thank you for listening to the entire podcast tonight. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe whenever medium you're listening to us on. Join us on our Discord. Link there down at the bottom, mixedmediapodcast.com. You can also find everywhere else you can that we're streaming our podcast, and you can also join us supporting us on Locals. A special shout out to our supporters on Locals: Post, K Kairos, Alex Egbert, and 99 Crime. Yeah, and I think I think, as Irving said earlier, pay attention, look out in case some changes and things with the podcast are coming. But if not, thanks again for joining us tonight.
Yep. See you next week.
Thanks for watching.
Look, tell a man no trouble. I don't want beef, man. I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then I'm on side. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time? Getting hype on my line. Tell a man I don't want feedback, I just want relax. Brand new whip, two-tone, I need that brand new hit. You know, like lean back, brand new bits I live in. We pack, man, you never gon' like us. Get them on sight now, let them on light. That way they know I'm more righteous. Look at my life, I'm living alright. I'm nice, you know I'm alright. Cause looking like Christ, no need for the hype or fight or telephone vipers. No need for the